if you're a creative person and you hate routine, but you know it's actually going to make you more productive, what do you do? I'm Suzanne Rath, and you're listening to Endures for your daily dose of endurance leadership and life lessons. So I am somebody who really values freedom. This is why I really value the build stage, the leadership, the strategy stages of business. Like, it's very big picture thinking, but why I also want a level of autonomy around how I spend my time. But today I went into my training peaks, which essentially is my running, cycling, all of my physical training. And I've been off a program for the last probably 7 weeks at this stage, because I ran Sydney to Newcastle and then I did Margaret River 5 weeks later. And so there's been bits of travel for work and recovery and so on around that. And I was so happy when I logged back into the app and saw my program for next week. And so today on the podcast, I decided to have a little look at how we can make routines work for us as people who are creative, or who maybe value freedom, or who set up a business, because we want to live the lives that we want, or who value autonomy, or whatever the case might be, if we don't want to have these really rigid structures in our day. So first off, the way I would like to propose that you adapt routine is not about routine at all, but that you adapt a rhythm. So if we have a vague rhythm around when we do things, so when we do our best work, for example, a rhythm around when we have maybe planned our training or our holidays or our rest time, that is really helpful. Number one, it's really helpful for preventing against decision fatigue, because we know the more decisions that we have to make, the more we get decision fatigue and the quality of those decisions declines. So we actually need to put in these little micro breaks and so on in our day. Two, it's better for our actual performance because we're getting our best work done at our most energized times. And three, it's more likely that we will create the conditions for a flow state. Now, the difference between protecting a rhythm around how we work and how we live, where we have these little rocks in and we have some vague anchors in our day. So for me, my training is a real part of that. Like, my training is the first anchor for my week. My 3 core projects for the week are, the next anchors, and they relate back to my vision for the year, my values, down to my quarterly goals, the current chapter I'm in, my monthly goals. What is the most important thing this week to move the needle on those things? So that's 2 anchors already. That's my training, and that's my kind of 3 priorities of the week. Then there might be maybe like a social thing or somebody's birthday or appointments I need to take the dogs to. So those are other anchors. But all around those anchors, I actually leave space to, 1, because there needs to be space for reactive work, and 2, to do the work in the way that I see fit. So if it comes down to my speaking and my coaching, for example, I will not have every microsecond planned. So I'll have a list of priorities, but if something else comes up, like say, for example, if I get asked to pitch for something, if I have a strategy call with somebody, if a new workshop comes in, I will take the time to do that, and I don't feel bad about it. So in this way, if we're not completely married to this really rigid routine, but we have a rough rhythm for doing our best work, then we can actually get more done and avoid these feelings of guilt and overwhelm and so on. The other thing I want to discuss with you is often we see routine as having every second of the day accounted for, and that is so not what I'm about. I've spoken on the podcast about this before. I am a fan of ice baths and biohacking and things like that, probably more than the average person. But this idea of this perfect morning routine, we have to stop. Getting up and doing 25 things before you have a coffee or, before you sit down at your desk. Great if that works for you, but that optimization is certainly not something that works for everybody, and it's certainly not something that works for me. And so when I work with clients, firstly around their performance pulse check, which is a really simple one-on-one assessment, entry-level assessment I do with people in coaching session, we look at what actually matters to them, but also how they work, how they're energized, what they value. Some people may really love that routine. For other people, it is completely constraining. And for me, the idea of routine is really constraining, but the idea of rhythm and performance is huge. And so we need to ask ourselves about the micro routines or the micro rhythms that we are adopting. The thing is, every one of us will have some bit of a rhythm. So if you have no designed rhythm, no designed blocks in your week, no designed routine, what you'll end up doing is going in and reacting to every single thing that lands in your inbox or every single thing that lands in front of you. And this is the busy work that should not take up your most energized time of day. It's not the most productive work. So you still have a routine or you still have a rhythm, you just haven't intentionally designed it. The irony is with creative people, like a lot of the time we don't want to design a rhythm because we don't want to be bored. We don't want things to be too rigid. We want to be more spontaneous. We don't want to lose our identity. We can have all of those things within a well-designed rhythm or a well-designed focused block of work, because the alternative is we struggle because everything feels urgent. Things don't get constrained. So the task will expand because we have all day to do it. You know, we burn energy constantly deciding. The list goes on. So I would invite you to think, where in your life do you have these routines or rhythms, whatever you would prefer to call them, that are anchored in nicely to actually support the work that you're doing, the life you're living, to support your energy? And where could you maybe benefit from a few more of those? Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow for more from Endures.